Hello, everyone, and thanks for giving us your time today for VR Gamescast. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by Don Hopper in Missouri as we discuss what people are playing in VR headsets. We're wearing Quest 3 headsets with last generation meta avatars. We're using hand tracking and external microphones this week. Uh, we've got Beck out there in Canada broadcasting this show for us today, and thank you to our UploadVR patrons for helping us expand our coverage. That's Mike Manzano, Holland Podum, developer Smash Drums, XR Developer News, and Aaron Bellamy. Thank you to all of our YouTube members as well, all of us, our site members as well. Thank you to everyone tuning in. I see Opsar out there is chewing on some popcorn as they are watching our show. And Wrath is mentioning that MetaConnect has already been set. We'll have that article. I think they already have that article on our site.
I think we
But
did. Yeah.
constant stuff going through our site with new news we'll get into on our next episode if we don't cover it today. Don, what do we have today?
Well, Ian, today I think we keep it to our three subjects. We've been doing pretty well with that over the last couple of episodes, kind of focusing things down. So I think today we should start off by talking about having a little discussion about some disappointing news in the fact that Metro Awakening had some underperforming financial expectations. And then I think that we kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about a very large patch that Behemoth just received. I mean, this thing had over like 700 fixes in it. So interesting to break that down. And then after that, I think that we need to take a deeper dive into some comments that John Carmack made that we have covered on the site on Twitter or X as it's now known about PCVR versus standalone and why he thinks standalone is more important to the industry and future of VR success. So I guess let's kick it off. I mean, what do you think, Ian? What do you think could be the cause of Behemoth's underperforming sales?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's underperforming according to the executives' expectations. That was
Yeah.
the way this was worded, and uh, that doesn't mean it was a bad game. That's what we
No.
have to tease apart, right? Like, let's let's
Hmm.
let's give yours. Let's give a moment here before we have that discussion. What was the game? You played this game through, and
Oh, I
you
played it.
you
Yeah.
liked it
Yeah, I
quite a lot,
reviewed it.
right?
I did our full review on the site and I absolutely loved the game. I mean, it was rough in the beginning. I mean, it was and they had to come out with I mean, it's I don't know. It's hold on, sorry. I'm having a glitchy in my headset. It's like everything is going. So
Uh-oh.
it's so There we go. Everything's coming back. Sorry about that, folks. I was literally like going into one frame a second mode here. It's a great game. It was beautiful. It was narrative. It was atmospheric, especially on PlayStation VR 2. And the thing is they talk about that in the article that we have on the site is the fact that it's being said that it had underperforming sales, but it had extremely good reviews on all systems. So I don't know. It's like what's not meshing up here between the reviews and the sales?
I think that's the takeaway, right? I think that's
Yeah.
probably why that's one of the reasons we covered this is it's kind of signifies the overall market direction. You have a team that's decent sized that you've brought to bear for a big name project from some partner out there that has the rights to that name brand. You went and made it with your team of however many people it was, probably more than a dozen people, maybe a couple dozen people. You're
Mhm.
throwing at this game, and then you have to put it out into the market at Christmas time, or that's the case for this game, and hope that you match your expenditure for the game. And this indication, this quote is sort of hinting that maybe it didn't. Um,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
that's yeah, it's a bummer. Like it's tough to see that, but it doesn't mean that one and two person teams that were right sized to begin with, just built from the passion, and you have these people that uh, built something beautiful, and then suddenly it found an audience.
mhm.
Those people are still uh, going along okay in many instances. Not many instances, in a few instances,
Well,
there are these
yeah. I mean,
individual small teams that are doing okay.
Well, and I think that really kinda you kinda hit the nail on the head here, and we kinda close out the article on the site with that. It says, "Even with the state of recent high-profile releases, also including things like Batman Arkham Shadow, Rogue Incursion, Behemoth, VR gaming remains an indie-dominated space filled with mostly smaller studios." And, those teams are gonna see success in a different light than a major entity like Skydance, I mean, or Vertigo, sorry. I got Skydance on the brain because we're going to be talking about Behemoth next. But yeah, I mean, so I could see that something like Thief Simulator reaching over 310,000 sales on Quest alone is a huge success. Into the Radius getting 800,000 sales, but for a franchise as big as something like Metro, a studio as pedigreed as Vertigo, is that the metric that they were wanting to hit? And the thing is it they didn't really say. It was unclear what the specific financial expectations that Embracer Group, the owner of the studio, had in mind to begin with. So it's like, why are they saying it's underperforming, but they're not telling us what the performance target actually was?
So this is fascinating, the discussion we're having in the comments, and I encourage you to jump in there in the comments. Let us know where you're watching us from in the world, whether it's in VR or the physical world. Let us know. We love seeing that. And do share this link out to others. Get other people in here who, I don't know, might be on the fence about getting a VR headset, maybe has a VR headset and hasn't popped it out from time to time. There's so many comments here discussing the whole range of what's going on out there. So um, there's the one Opsar saying that this game had to compete with $10 shovelware like I Am Security, I Am Cat,
Yeah.
and the Nightclub Simulator. And this is a full price VR game competing with that being the reality of the market at Christmas. I think that's probably what you just described is probably the biggest indicator of what
It
happened
really
here,
is.
right? Like
Yeah.
that game would have probably been fine at Christmas if those games weren't on the storefront. It would be a good theory. I would guess that theory would probably hold weight if those games were. But is the market better for having those games on the market at Christmas time? I Am Cat, all those people that turned into cats at Christmas? I think so.
I think it's whatever you're after as a player. I mean, there's obviously going to be some players that a game like Metro Awakening is not what they're after. I mean, it is a visceral game. It's dark, it's gritty, it's up in your face, it's shooter, it's violent, so I mean, that could really speak to the player base. Is it what the player base wants right now? And currently, I mean, we are seeing a lot of these, and I wouldn't call them shovelware. I mean, I Am Cat. We reviewed it. It was fun. I had a good time playing it, but I couldn't see myself playing it for more than a day or two, before I got bored with it.
Uh,
So again, just going back to the player base of the game itself.
So Siegfried saying, no, Behemoth is the best game of 2024. I've played it start to finish 3 times.
3 times. Wow. Okay.
And then Metal right above that saying UEVR is the only thing keeping PCVR barely alive. And all I want,
Mm,
like, it's an interesting thought. What I'm going to reframe back at you is what if PCVR, what if UEVR was always the shape of the PCVR market, always the way the PCVR market needed to be? Mods for existing PC games. What if that was always the path for PC VR? Like, you go get the game that you bought in 2000, and then you add on a fan-made mod to it, and you're good to go. You deal with whatever discomfort you encounter. You add a mod that maybe protects your comfort if that's sensitive to you. All I want to do is argue and just suggest that maybe that's what PCVR always will be, always should be, is an openly fan modded experience.
I
And
mean,
yeah, sorry, go ahead, Don.
no, no, I was gonna say, I mean, I could see that, Ian. I could see that that's kinda the future we're heading towards, I don't know about always should be, always will be, though. I mean, it's, we needed PCVR to be what it was, to build that intense hype for where we are now, you know? So, and we'll get into a lot of that, I think, in the final discussion when we start talking about, John Carmack's discussion, his views on PCVR versus standalone. But
Yeah, it's a good transition to begin discussing that because I think that's where we're gonna lead into this discussion, and the conversation just keeps on going on this subject.
mhm,
Onikaze, it doesn't matter the economy and non-competition for NVIDIA has turned PC gaming into a rich man's hobby, and that's
that's true.
hysterical to think of that because it was a rich person's hobby 10 years ago, but you're exactly right, Onikaze, that it is even more so, that everything about the
You
market
know,
forces has made it even more of a rich
it
person's
has
game.
been, and it's become even more so, and I can totally speak to that because the GPUs alone. I mean, I remember back when I was building my PC for my CV1, and I'm ready to drop down some serious cash for that. Well, the GPU was only like 600, maybe 500-600 bucks of that expenditure. Now I'm dropping like 2 grand just for the GPU alone. So yes, it has become more of a rich man's game if you want to have that blistering, super hyper ultra semi-realistic. That was a really big word salad, wasn't it? PCVR experience, versus what you're going to get with a standalone, like on what you're going to get on Quest. And we see that in games right now that are releasing across multiple platforms. So you see it in Metro Awakening. We saw that on Quest, we saw that on PCVR. Same game, completely different experience. And Alien Rogue Incursion, that's the one that we just looked at last week. I mean, highly different experience playing on standalone versus PCVR.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna lose the audience here or if this little, essay I'm about to give is gonna be clippable to send to some of our audience, but Don and I have a whole, set of hardware
Mhm.
that is either on the way to our apartments or has already been installed in our offices. And the hardware includes a arcade cabinet that's just the bottom half of the arcade cabinet. It's just the buttons of the arcade
Okay.
cabinet. Another thing that's coming is a rifle-sized blaster that has um, incredibly realistic haptics. Another one that's coming for me is a handset that looks just like or feels just like a real physical handgun, and I can train and practice my shooting using the Quest controller placed backwards to provide the tracking on this little handgun or handset, and then practice my shooting in VR. The thing that I pointed out to you, and I'm pointing out to the people who are making these products, is that they should all work together in the same PCVR
Oh, I agree.
ecosystem, the same open ecosystem. It's the Maverick rifle coming from Stryker, sorry, the Maverick blaster coming from
Marvick,
Stryker that we're gonna look at. What was it?
Marvick, I think.
Oh,
Marvick.
Marvick? I thought it was Maverick.
Yeah, or is it
Man,
or
I'm
is
gonna
it
have to look it
Maverick?
up now.
Okay, now,
I think
yeah,
it was
I might have
Maverick,
had you
like,
going down. Okay.
but yeah, Don's gonna verify the name. But so we've got this
Yeah, I
blaster
am.
coming, and we're gonna look at it. And the arcade cabinet that we have from a completely different company should be compatible with this Maverick blaster for all the light gun games that have ever been made. So you, as a player at home, should be able to go and find a copy of Area 51 from the 1980s or 1990s, whenever that game originally came out. You should be able to put it on your PC system and then
Okay.
make it a big giant virtual display and then grab this Maverick gun and use it as a light gun in VR
Yeah,
for this game. You cannot. This does not work. This does not happen right
that would be
now.
so
This
cool, though.
this
Oh, that'd be so cool.
but we are going but I'm going to assign Don, myself, we're going to keep being in these people's inboxes again and again and again saying, "Are you working on anything
Mhm.
towards this end? Are you moving us towards this future where any one of you out there can go and get that game, Duck Hunt. Go get Duck Hunt.
Duck
Download
Hunt
it
would be so
from,
fun.
the original cartridge that you have. You've had it in your garage for 30 years. You go and get that cartridge, you get the game off the cartridge, you put it on your system, and boom, this Maverick gun that was it's like $600, I think, is how much they're charging for it.
It
It's an
is.
extraordinarily expensive gun. But now you're playing Duck Hunt 1 to 1, exactly as you did back in 1992. Okay, you've got the light gun and you're shooting that duck down as you're going, and
Mhm.
you've done it completely on your own, right? You've hacked together open source all the way down to the game itself. I believe that is probably the path forward for PC VR. That's just philosophically speaking, I think that's you're going to get people who are going to buy that hardware and hack their systems to enjoy the 5 games that they had a childhood memory of from 1990 and 1980 exactly as I'm describing. I want the buttons exactly as they were back in 1992. I want the light gun exactly as it was in 1985, and I am good. I'm going to show that off to all my friends. I will spend $1,000 for it, and I'm good for the future. I think that's a bigger market than people give credit for. I think there's a lot of people out there in that section of just, "I'm not going to do this unless it's as open as I just described."
I can see that. I mean, I can see that. One thing that you said though, you said going forward with PCVR, to me that almost sounds like as someone who's been in the PCVR scene for 25 years, going backwards a little bit because that's saying now instead of companies going forth and making specific things that we should just hack everything together again and I see it. It is, again, as we kind of build towards that final discussion of John Carmack talking about it. I Standalone is super important. I've always been a PC VR enthusiast, and it is something that I don't want to see go away. Because these are the experiences. PC VR is where I'm living my dreams. I'm living my fantasies. I'm flying X-wings. I'm, doing things that I have not yet been able to do in a standalone VR headset. So,
And what I just described, that path that I laid out, right? You can imagine how long is still ahead of us to realize what I've just described. I'm seeing Arlen acknowledging that nostalgia is powerful. Siegfried saying, "Could AI help make VR
mhm.
versions of flat screen games more easy and cheaper?" Imagine you being in a VR headset and out in front of you, the entire map of the first level of Mario Brothers 3 is in front of you. The start of the map is over here on your left, and the end of the map is over here on the right. And you can see the entire map as it's playing out right in front of you from left to right. The entire course is there. And so you send the character, you send your Mario starting over here, and you're seeing him jump, you're seeing him fly through the sky, you're seeing him drop down and not going maybe you don't go into the tunnels, right? And then he goes over here through the blocks, and then boom, you go up to running speed right at the end, and go through the star at the end and get your star. But the
Ooh,
whole map, the entirety of Mario Brothers 3 map, exists in front of you on this super ultra 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 wide screen.
that would be so cool. Oh, that would
I,
be
I
awesome.
think I think we're gonna have hacks like that, and I don't know if they're AI generated or not.
Siegfried, just brought up Mario Brothers, but like Moss VR. Oh, that would be insane.
Mm. So there are tools that do that. There's a couple tools you can go in and do a different version of, so what I just described was like what would you call that? Ultra
I'd
widescreen,
say,
flat screen
yeah,
gaming?
ultra wide flat screen. Yeah.
So there's some Mario games that even had this as a mechanic in the game, but there are people that are hacking this together where just imagine the whole game flipped to its side, and now you're looking at the course straight on down, depth-wise, in a straight line straight in front of you as if it was like a pistol whip map. And now you're going up and down to try to go beat all of the obstacles. There are tools for that as well in some of these classic games, and once someone breaks through the way to adapt those games, it'll be pretty repeatable for all the other games. So I do think
Oh,
there's a
yeah.
path there.
Right on. All
Oh,
right.
are you
Well,
ready to
you
talk
think
about the second
I was
subject,
going to
Don?
say, I think it's time to transition here over to something that was a little interesting. So this week, actually just a couple of days ago, we saw the second major patch for Skydance's Behemoth drop, and it has now gone live across all the different platforms. And what I found was interesting was the number of fixes that were in this patch. Now, they already had addressed their day one issues that we covered on our site in our review and on a stream with me and Ian. So go look for those. But they already dropped a pretty big patch week one just to address those issues and the combat and the lackluster launch. But now we just got a patch that has over 700 things that have been fixed in the game. So that is insane. They've done a lot of environmental concerns like visual pop-in, holes, floating objects, sound issues, improvements to the grabbing, which I know was one of my sticking points. I was constantly having issues grabbing things in that game. Climbing was also kind of a sticky thing with me, and they seem to have fixed that. So really, really cool to see that they are continuing to address the player concerns, and they've actually confirmed that it's not their final patch. I mean, they are saying that there are some issues that are going to require more time to fix. So other plan changes are in the works, including the arena mode coming out of beta. So really cool to keep our eye on this and see how much better Behemoth can get, because I already enjoyed the game. I mean, the time that we streamed it together on PSVR 2, that was great. That is still my preferred play method, is to play it on PlayStation VR 2. But if you haven't played Behemoth yet, I do recommend that game.
Yeah, so I'm seeing Siegfried mentioning that Behemoth no longer works on Steam Link, and we did get a very interesting tip
Oh,
to our inbox that we were curious about following up on. If you've encountered anything like this, maybe an old game that you can't get up and running or something like that, let us know. Email tips@uploadvr.com. We are looking at that. Let us
yeah.
know if you're in the same boat as Siegfried out there and you've encountered that. Something we're looking at and thinking about longer term. But tips at uploadvr.com or use the contact us page. Doom, why did Metro underperform? Go watch that last discussion. I think we got
Yeah.
to I think we got to the crux of it when we were discussing the idea that there were a bunch of lower cost, high quality. I don't think they were shovelware. I don't think, as
I
one
don't think
commenter
no.
pointed out, I don't think you can
Yeah.
call I Am Cat shovelware, even if its gameplay loop is completely different than the gameplay loop in something like this, where you want to be hooked for 12 hours
Now,
versus I Am Cat, where it's like I'm going to play 10 minutes, become a cat, and get the heck out of there.
well, I was gonna say now I can back in this to a discussion we had last week though, is when this game came out around the holiday time, how much more was I Am Cat or I Am Security or all of these games pushed to the forefront of everybody's feed more than a game like Metro, you know? So that there's that as well. I mean, at least coming from the meta side. So, because I can tell you,
And
I very rarely ever saw Metro Awakening on the front page of my Meta app or when I logged into my headset. It was still all Horizon Worlds, I Am Cat, I Am Security, the things that are kind of gearing more towards that younger generation of gamers, as we reported on with the leaked Bosworth memo, that is something that Meta is aware of and targeting. So
yeah, so Doom, we're going to be on that story throughout the year. Go check out uploadvr.com on a in a broader way. A great number of VR companies, studios are laying off people, closing offices, and reducing the size of their teams. We've had a number of people reach out to us looking for where the jobs are that they're reaching out to us saying where can I apply for work? And that's a very upsetting message to get. Like we will try to put a highlight on any of those companies that are doing major hiring. But like there's very if we point out 5 companies that are hiring and they are all startups, you can
yeah,
imagine that startups are on an 18-month period where they have to go and raise another round of funding in 18 months in order to keep your job funded. And so it becomes really hard to like recommend people go and try to get a job at X startup because um, that's the way it functions at most startups. That all said, we still see one and two-person teams. You can imagine, like, I'm not going to recommend this because this is an enormously difficult path to do. Like, you're going to have to make enormous sacrifices in your life to do this. But what I've seen happen is like a technical coding engineer gets together with a very skilled artist and they
Mhm.
work out a system between the two of them to uh, send art from one direction, send code in the other direction, build a nice little prototype based on their art back and forth, and then put that in front of people and start iterating from there and give yourself enough runway to keep that iteration going with your art partner for 6 months, a year and a half, the same period that you would imagine for a startup, but it's building a community around your game idea. There are people that are doing that and going at that right now, and it's going to be enormously difficult. But I've seen people do it in the past, right? I've seen this path done. It's a harder time in the market. Um, but here's the problem is like you could if you had gotten onto Meta's release schedule between the years, let's say 2020 and 2023, you could be guaranteed a lot of eyeballs to look
Oh,
at
yeah.
your product that's getting put on their store at $30 or $40. Sometime last year, Meta removed that guarantee. They removed that promise for VR developers. And now your $30, $40 product is not going to be guaranteed any of those eyeballs. So you have to go back to what, $10 and
Mhm.
go back to building your own audience for your game that's excited to pay that $10 without the help of Meta. And man, it is super difficult. That said, though, there is potential in like cross-platform release now. Now where your last priority was, I got to get on the Metastore release schedule. Now it's maybe I should get an early access product onto Steam and an early
Mhm.
access product onto Quest and see how each of those grab an audience. Uh, Again, I'm not a game developer. I'm not recommending any of these paths to anyone. I want to just give an overview of what I'm seeing work and not
Yeah.
work.
No, and I agree, and Siegfried, Siegfried, you're killing it in the chat today. Thank you so much for all of your thoughtful comments here. And he's just kind of parroting what we're saying. Is so are the cheap games to blame, or is it Meta's fault? And I think it's a combination or neither. Obviously, cheap games are always going to be that low hanging fruit, especially for new users wanting to try a bunch of different things. They're going to go in, they're going to sort the store, or they're going to look for the cheapest thing that they can get, so they can just bounce from thing to thing to thing. Is it Meta's fault? Well, they have been, and we've called them out on it. A lot of other people have called them out on it lately, been really pushing a lot of that Horizon World content, a lot of those free or free to play games, with buy up later into people's feeds, putting those at the forefront. So I guess in a way you could say that that would be Meta's fault in it, but I can't really fault developers for making inexpensive games. I mean, that's if that's what's going to keep the lights on, then that's what you do.
Well, free to play becomes a very big, we're not at free to play yet, but we're very close. We can
Yeah.
see the direction of all the ads. And can you imagine how like I will toss my headset in a river if I get into a game and there's a 10-second interstitial ad
Oh yeah.
before
Oh
I get
yeah.
into the game. Like that's not I don't put on my headset to spend time watching advertising.
Nope. Mm-mm.
And I
Yeah.
think
I
that's a
mean,
big miss on the whole, like, ads help, but there's a very thin line where it's like, I'm done. I'm out of
yeah.
here."
Well, we covered that. We covered that, I think, a week or 2 ago, and I mean, like, I think we both agreed, "Hey, I'm cool with ads if you do them right," if you make it natural, if it's a billboard in a world that I'm walking through, or I'm walking past a window and there's some TVs in it and it's playing some sort of commercial for something, well, that just enhances my presence a little bit because that's something I would see in everyday life. But no, some sort of ad just thrown in my face before I can actually do what I'm in my headset to do. No, that would be definitely throw my headset in the river moment. So,
I mean, ironically, I mean, can you imagine getting the 10-second ad for some game that looks like your dream game, right? It looks like exactly
mhm,
what you want, and then you spend another 20 seconds clicking into the ad as the Horizon World launches, and then boom, you're in Horizon World actually playing the thing you were advertised, and it's nothing like the advertisement. You've actually gone to
mhm.
a place virtually that is
Oh
nothing
yeah,
like the ad that you were shown, and gosh, that's a pretty good analogy for the way mobile gaming ads work right now, and no one in our
big
audience
time,
really wants that kind of
big time.
experience.
And
There's one
Casey
comment I wanted
Chiefs.
to respond
Oh
to.
no,
Yeah.
go ahead. I was going to respond to Casey Chiefs, but go right ahead.
Well, I'll talk about Arlen's, maybe you could talk about Casey Chiefs, but Arlen's
Okay.
saying, "It's not just the gaming industry, the whole tech sector is in a weird place. I share the same opinion that many other
Mhm.
commenters have made. Most of the low-hanging fruit have been picked." Um, I disagree with that in VR. I don't think the low-hanging fruit has been picked yet in VR, only because the low-hanging fruit is broken across multiple platforms, and some of those platforms are siloed as like console-like systems. There is a lot of low-hanging fruit, I think, to grab in fundamental activities. Like, what is low-hanging fruit in VR? Like what? Let's
No,
think
that's a
of
good
what that is.
question.
Big screen. Big
Yeah.
screen handles movie theaters. Walkabout Mini Golf handles golf courses, as does Golf Plus. So all your golf courses are covered by those two games. Um, Shooters, all the shooters are covered, right? That's not
You
you
got
can
your
go have
shooters.
war games wherever you want. Your paintball in any flavor
We
whatsoever.
got bowling, pinball. We got table tennis. I mean, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, 11. You've got table tennis locales. So right now I'm in New York, one of the most expensive places to live in the world. And down the street from me is a ping pod, a place that it's a couple blocks away, and you spend something like 20 bucks or something to rent a ping pong table
Okay.
for a half an hour. And so you could rent a ping pong table in this locked room. You unlock the room with your phone. You go into the room, you're under cameras the entire time you're in this ping pod playing this game. So they're observing you and watching how you're enjoying your ping pong game. And you can play ping pong for a half an hour for that rate. Isn't 11 table tennis a better deal than that? Isn't it
Oh, big time.
more available to you than the ping pod I just described? Like I'm in one of the like that's an extremely expensive luxury, amenity to have in a major city. You can go to table tennis clubs in most cities in the United States, but it'll cost you a little bit. You can only go on Thursday nights from 8 to 10 p.m., and you have to spend gas and all this money to actually
Uh-huh.
physically get there. Um, VR is right there. There's already
Oh,
a game
absolutely.
and a community and a club devoted to table tennis, and you can find friends who are as obsessed with table tennis as you are in that community, and that goes for a lot of different like verticals,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
There's communities out there playing the game you love.
Well, and then take it another step down the rabbit hole further into mixed reality. Now you can have that table tennis in your own home and have a friend over and play that way, or have a few friends over and play that way. I mean, so that is definitely the low hanging fruit. I mean, and there's still, and I agree, there's still a lot more out there that we can see in both virtual and mixed reality.
How about
The
this?
address that what? No, go
So,
ahead.
what if PCVR is too open to profit from?
Okay. Now see that actually is interesting because it is a very open platform. It is not the walled garden that we see with Meta.
S-
So,
So, what does that say about? So, take my theory a few steps forward. My curious question: what does that say about these whale communities that have millions of people inside of Roblox, inside of Minecraft, Call of Duty, these games that all the executives that we quote are all trying to create the next one of, right? They're all trying to go and target the Roblox community and cut off some of that audience or target the Call of Duty community. And let's shift all of those millions of people over to our big live service game, and they're failing again and again and again. Whereas, like, Flight Simulator, right? What was it? 10% of their community is playing it in VR. Those 10% of, that small portion of the flight sim community is not necessarily like the other 90% of the flight sim community, right? Like, they are invested at an entirely different level than the other 90% in both the game, in creating the simulation as realistically as you could. And again, you're paying the same audience, right? You go buy a copy of Flight Simulator, or you go and you get your Xbox Games Pass. You're playing the same game. You're just choosing whether to play it flat or you're choosing to play it
yeah.
VR. And I feel like that's ultimately the path forward for everything. And you get companies like Microsoft and Meta and Apple and Google, and none of them want to cede a flippin' inch of the potential of this market. And so they're just not open to anything that isn't completely open at the base level. So, like, OpenXR, open games, PC games becoming OpenXR based, and then getting flat modes or VR modes, and you as the fan out there can decide, am I in the VR camp or am I in the flat camp? That feels like the path.
I mean, that definitely feels like the path we're on currently. I mean, I would much, much, much rather see all games have both modes, you know? I mean, I really would, since this has been going on, I mean, I've been watching this build for the better part of 10 years now. I really felt like at this point, we would just see games as they came out just have both a flat and a VR mode. And unfortunately, except for some of those hardcore sims and things like that, we really haven't seen that adoption. Now, you're talking about the 10% playing Flight Simulator in VR. I cannot imagine playing that game anymore on a flat screen. I mean, after actually feeling like I have sat in the cockpit of so many of these amazing planes and and really felt that presence of being in the air, and it would be so foreign to me to play a game like that, especially on a flat screen anymore.
So I know a guy who is a pinball machine fanatic. Loves pinball, and I think he's got several pinball machines installed in his house. Uh, a VR headset with the arcade cabinet thing that Don and I each have in our offices right now. That
Mhm.
arcade cabinet has buttons on either side that
Yeah, it does, pinball.
could easily work as the input system for pinball. And gosh, I mean, Don, let's think about that, guys. Okay, you go to pinball, you're talking what, the 50s and 60s and 70s of gaming, right? And all you've
Uh-huh.
got is two buttons on either side to physically move the game ball through the game, right? There's an open project called Visual Pinball, and all we need, and to that person that's asking about AI, right, is a couple very motivated open source contributors out there to make a VR version of Visual Pinball, to make
Uh-huh.
a version of that that adapts to any system you install it on, and then you get a bunch of fans recreating the uh, the maps for those old games from the 60s and 70s, and you've got a path. Now, there's also companies out there that are licensing these games and putting them out, so you can go and get FX Pinball on various
Yeah,
stores,
love
and
that game.
yeah, incredible. But if you go and look at FX Pinball and try to get this installed on your system,
Mm-mm.
man, the one board you want is in the one version of the game that isn't
Yep.
on the particular system that you have in your house at this given moment. So I wanna play the Star Wars board, the Star
Yeah.
Wars cabinet that I loved from back in the day, but it's only in that copy of the game on that particular system, and I can't get
Mhm.
it. That's why it's
Yeah.
not like how do we get across this barrier where, "Oh, yeah, you're the pinball fan? Okay, here's what you do. You go get this package, or this package," or you go and get, you go get the UEVR, modding, hub, and it includes things that aren't UEVR modded hubs, and you just click the little install package, and boom, a whole bunch of assets get installed to your game system, and you're good to go with visual pinball. My whole point is, if you're looking for the money for the people to buy your game or to buy, like, your accessory, it is there in this community, right? It's not necessarily in that community of 10-year-olds who are going to beg their mom for $10 to become a cat for the
Oh,
afternoon,
yeah. Yeah.
right? It's
Oh,
the
no way.
people that have $1,500 to get that feeling that they had in 1975 again.
And that is, and, we talked about that way earlier at the show. We had comments on it. The nostalgia factor is huge, and especially for the older generation who have VR headsets. I mean, me, I'm 54. I talk about nostalgia stuff all the time. I feel like I'm the old man of VR some days. Old Gray Don's going to tell you stories, kids of the day, but I would spend tons of money chasing that dragon to have that feeling back.
How
And you keep referencing it. We haven't really talked a lot about it. So the X Arcade, arcade to TV VR is the controller that Ian keeps mentioning that we've both recently received, and it we're gonna have coverage of this. It's really cool. It has brought back some of those feelings for me. The minute you see a mixed reality arcade cabinet just pop up in your room, and you actually have the tactile sensations of feeling the sticks and the buttons. But I agree. I want that thing to do so much more, Ian. I want it to work with all sorts of different games. I want to be able to load up the Star Wars Pinball FX on Quest and have it just natively work with those buttons. So yeah.
so
I go ahead.
AKA Big Worm saying the VR future is with the kids. The older people like us are a smaller niche, and we have the cash. Entirely accurate,
That's true.
beautifully, like,
That is.
incisive, observation of the market. But I'm gonna maybe make enemies here, okay? Um,
Uh-oh.
you know how Star Wars gets such a bad all these people criticize every new Star Wars movie the moment it comes out. Somehow Palpatine survived. Okay, fine. That was a stupid line, and it was stupid that they brought Palpatine back in Fortnite. Okay,
Oh
first
yeah.
before they actually did the movies. Stupid, stupid, stupid. However, what I want to get at here is the people that go and see the latest Marvel movie, the latest movie that they loved as a kid, and then they come out and they go on the internet and they complain about the movie. Those people, by and large, is my belief, don't have children and didn't take their kids to go see the movie, and they did not see the movie through the eyes of their child. They did not
I
see
love
it
that.
with the fresh eyes that they did back in the day. And I want to apply that principle to what you just said about the kids being the future and the older people being the niche. I have a dream, sorry to start it off that way, of teaching my children the history of personal computing, the history of video games through virtual reality. I have a
Yep.
dream of putting a pair of VR headsets on my kids. Player 1 is right here, and player 2 is right here, and they are playing Area 51 from the 1990s. Exactly as I described. We do not have to go down to the arcade because the arcade no longer exists, okay?
Uh-huh.
Then I'm gonna take them from the arcade few years forward, and I'm gonna take my cartridge that I've got for all my Game Boy games, and I'm gonna put it into the little reader here, and I'm gonna show them, "Hey, kids, you see that game right here? It's now over here. It's been brought over to this system here, and now we're gonna play it in we're gonna play that on your arcade system right here, okay? So now Mario Brothers 3 or Tetris is on their system, and they're playing two-player Tetris right here, and then we move forward from there to the 1990, to the mid-1990s, and we move on to Quake or Doom or Wolfenstein, and we move on up with that. Do you see where I'm going with this, folks, right?
Mhm.
There's a path here for the entire history of video games to be expressed inside VR headsets, and you never have to leave the home. So there's a path for parents to teach their children about all of this stuff. There's paths for teenagers to learn about the entire history of video gaming and personal computing simply by doing exactly what I'm describing, messing around with emulation in VR.
Well, and not only that, as we kind of have talked about education in VR, getting to experience it, not just read about it or see it or watch it in a video, getting to experience some of that, firsthand and create those memories. So very, very cool there. So, we've talked a lot about this, and I kind of think it all has kind of built towards the last subject, and that was John Carmack recently commented. He had some interesting comments describing PCVR as a boutique niche and standalone as the biggest win that VR ever had, and saying that Beat Saber was far more important to virtual reality's success than Half-Life Alyx.
Yeah, so John Carmack, if you aren't familiar with him, he was the technical guide at Oculus, and I interviewed him various times over the years in various ways. Quite a joy to find him at a
Mhm.
conference. And for those that aren't familiar with who this guy is and how he operates, so he worked on the early id games in the early 1990s. So Wolfenstein and
Yes.
Doom, the original Doom. You can think of him as like the father of
The
Doom or one of
father
the
of
co-creators.
yeah, first person gaming practically, I mean,
Yeah.
so
Figuring it out in the early 1990s, figuring out sort of the way to distribute that, with his team. There's stories floating around on the internet now of how he took some of the money that I think that they got from, those first games and bought himself some fancy cars. I think he got banned from the local
Mhm.
Ferrari dealer, I
Yep.
think is what it said, because he modded the cars, and that's, against,
Yeah.
against their way of doing things. Then, so he did games for a really, really long time, and then he took all of his money that he made out of building games and put it into rocketry. So he had
Yep.
Aerospace, and he was competing with Elon Musk there for a while to try to solve this problem of how do we send rockets into orbit but reuse the rockets so we don't lose 90% of our costs or 99% of
Mhm.
our costs every single launch. That problem, as soon as they solve it, unlocks space for the rest of us, right? We actually have a chance of going to space. Our children have a chance of going to space because of that problem getting solved, right? Really, really amazing idea. Anyways, he ran out of money. He spent too much of his money on on blowing up rockets to try to compete with Elon Musk, and then started hacking together VR headsets with Palmer Luckey. So he's trying to build his own HMD and starts chatting with Palmer Luckey over the internet. And Palmer Luckey
Yeah,
offers to
mhm.
send him the HMD, the head mounted display that Luckey was messing with at the time. I believe uh, Carmack was messing with the Sony HMD at the time, and then
He
he
was the
received
HMZT1,
Lucky's.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So he receives Lucky's HMD and he's like, "Oh wow, this is really good compared to what I was messing with." He takes that HMD to E3. He gives a couple interviews where he's like, "This is Palmer Lucky's HMD, and in about years from now, I want to see this running Android and VR straight from Android using cameras." He places out exactly the path that 2 years later Facebook
Mhm.
acquires them. And what's really fascinating is right now, Palmer Luckey, the co-founder of Oculus and the founder of Anduril, we'll cover that news and the news that he's making over on VR Download uh, consistently. We'll keep doing it again and again. But the interesting thing there is they're both Carmack and now Lucky are starting to share more about their internal thinking
Yeah.
going back a decade now into like why I did this and why I didn't go another way. And one of the things Lucky explained was that when Carmack and Lucky and all these like something to recall here is when Carmack do, was interested in becoming like the CTO for early Oculus, he was actually employed still at the Doom Creator company out in Texas, and he had to figure out a way to like how do I
Mhm.
how do I both help birth the launch of the VR industry and also not get sued by my employer for sharing secrets? Well, he got sued, right? ZeniMax, the
Oh,
company,
yeah.
there was a whole lawsuit in Texas, and everyone fighting over
Well, I think
this.
it was the
Yeah, sorry, go
modification
ahead.
of Doom, wasn't it? Like, because he modified Doom
Mm,
to run Doom 3 to
y-
run on the original Oculus prototype.
Yeah, so like my very first demo, if you go back to 2012 or so, I go into a room where Brendan Uribe and Lucky are there, and "Oh, you're Palmer Lucky. Can I interview you real quick and tell me about all these all the gadget guts at your desk and tell me about what you're doing?" And I'm going over to Brendan Uribe, and Brendan
Yeah.
Uribe gives me a whole thing about why Portal wouldn't be a good experience. Right? We just went and played
Oh,
Portal
we just played it, it was great.
in VR. And then we go over to the demo area, and he puts the duct tape headset on my head, and I'm pretty sure the very first thing I tried was Doom 3
Mhm,
VR. But I put it on, and he's like, just don't be real specific about where you are right now. Don't we can't really share that kind
mhm.
of stuff right now." And yeah, that's like a
Oh,
decade, more
man.
than a decade later, the type of situations these companies had to navigate in order to try to make this whole shifting happen.
I I
All right.
I love
So
hearing these stories. This the hearing those
uh,
stories of you getting to see the actual, like, duct taped prototype is just, like,
and
awe-inspiring, so
and handed a game controller, right? And I'm
yeah,
using the
yeah,
stick to navigate through the
yeah.
space, and he's warning me that I'm gonna get sick. He gets sick, right, really
Yeah.
easily, all that stuff, right?
Oh, that's so
Um,
cool.
but this is all the context I wanna give, right? Right, we're going to 2012 to 2014, and Lucky, in his recent interviews, is describing why Mark Zuckerberg's all right, I'm gonna spoil this one. I love this. All right, gosh. If you go back into the history books, there is a person who watched Mark Zuckerberg get into the elevator and go to Oculus's offices. And that person went to Reddit and said, "Hey, I don't know what's going on here, but
Mhm.
I just saw Mark Zuckerberg in the Oculus offices." Person got downvoted and got, downvoted to obscurity at the time. And then 2 months later, Facebook acquired Oculus for over $2 billion, made billionaires of some of the people involved. And that was the rest is history, right? Then we've got the last decade of VR after that. I reached out to the person who shared that over on Reddit quite a long time ago, and they actually got back to me today to say they might
Oh.
share with me the story of
Oh.
what it was
Oh, how
like that
cool.
day. I want that story so bad. I want to hear it from
Oh,
their mouths
yeah.
of what it was like to be in the elevator that day with Mark Zuckerberg and like what the heck, and then to see the response on Reddit. Okay, I need that story.
Yeah.
I heard from them today. I want that. All right, what I want to get at here, this is such a long-winded way of giving this context, right? The direction of the market irrevocably shifted the moment that Mark Zuckerberg spent that money to buy Oculus. It changed a whole bunch of Valve employees jumped ship from Valve to Facebook because Mark Zuckerberg told all of them the same thing that Palmer Luckey is sharing in public now. We're going to invest billions annually into making VR profitable. And the argument being that if you go to Microsoft, they're just going to cut you up and make you part of the Xbox the Xbox streaming plan. They're not going to give you the chance to actually do the hard R&D to make this doable. So people like Michael Abrash, the person who leads all of the research efforts at Facebook's Reality Labs, at Meta's Reality Labs, jumped from Valve, where they weren't going to invest in the same way as Meta to make this happen. And for the last decade, Meta has been in a class by itself where they have the PR reps, the developer relations people, the executives ready to say we're going to fund your idea, to just media blitz the entire market, right? They had a decade of just, we can send out free headsets to all the influencers out there. Again, not just one generation, but we can send
Oh,
out free
lots.
Quest 1s, free Quest 2s, Quest 3s, Quest Pros. We'll send them all out to all the influencers out there to get them talking about what we're doing. And it's been enormously successful within a small little niche, right? It's this thing that isn't getting bigger. My whole point though, right? Like, Carmack is like, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy when Carmack makes things uh with Andrew Bosworth or Carmack go, Beat Saber has been far more impactful than Half-Life Alex ever could be. Okay, but how many billions did you spend in promoting that product? Right? How many people were just drawn to Half-Life Alex with zero marketing dollars? Right?
True.
$0 other than, we made a product, you can go buy it on Steam. Right? Like, that's what Valve did, right? We made a product, go grab it on Steam. We're done. We're moving on. We're getting on to the next thing,
Just a
right?
mic dropped. I mean, that's what they did,
Okay, so
basically, just
how do you compare
so
those things, right? And ultimately, you go over the last decade, that is Valve's story. We're just gonna slowly little eke up from 1% to 2%. We're gonna sell our $1,000 kit again and again, and we're gonna wait. We're gonna wait this. We're gonna, I want to cuss. We're gonna wait this out. We're gonna
yeah.
wait this out, and that's what I felt like Valve was telling us this whole time. It's not ready, and I see it in our comments, right? I see you people. I see so many of you folks reflect the idea that graphics, physics, that's what VR is. Good VR is really complex physics and really detailed reflections, right? There's plenty of people out there in the comments who I think will argue that. And
Oh, I railed
I
on it
think
all
Valve
like last week. Last week in Alien, I mean, I railed on that. It was like it was a completely different experience, and I've said today, you talking about Metro in our first subject, completely different experience, and it is the physics, it is the graphics, it is the overall fidelity of what you get with PC VR that you just can't achieve currently with standalone. Now, that's not to say standalone is isn't gonna get there, you know? I mean, there are going to be advances in standalone that are going to just blow people's minds over the next decade. I have no doubt that we're gonna continue to see those, but it was interesting to see that, John Carmack saying that, that yeah, more AAA PC VR games is the way to win, but to be clear, standalone VR is the biggest win VR ever had by a huge margin, and Beat Saber definitely was more important than Half-Life Alex. Using a PC to drive VR experiences is a boutique niche, still valuable and definitely worth supporting as a bonus feature. And that's what I found interesting is the bonus feature. Because we've seen that before where games come out and they have like a VR add-on or a VR level or that's not what I want to see. I don't want to see VR being just this niche bonus that you get. Here's the standalone experience, and if you really want to see what it looked like, it was gonna look like high quality, go over and check it out on PC and get this little bonus level. That's what I really hope we don't start going towards.
See, ops are, how many millions of Quest headsets do you need to sold for it to be mainstream? And the thing is, it's not about selling headsets. It's about
Mm-mm.
making a product that people integrate into their lives on an
Yes.
ongoing basis, right? How do you make that? Okay. And all I'm like, there's the commenter saying it needs to be cheaper. graphics need to be better, resolution needs to be better, all that. Like, I, I'm 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 wearing the $500 Quest 3 right now,
Right.
and it doesn't hold a candle to the $3,500 Apple Vision Pro. And I'm
Uh-huh.
not saying you should go get an Apple Vision Pro. I'm broken every time I go and pick that headset up, and I don't have controllers to go and enjoy all of those controller-based experiences. But I mean, part of what's happening here, part of this transition is you've got to have uh like, when you go and grab a controller, you're saying, "Actually, what I don't wanna do right now is I don't wanna interact with this stuff with my bare hands. I need a tool."
Okay.
And that's fine. Like, there's plenty of things that you want to do in the world with tools in your hands. There's plenty of things you can only do with tools in your hands. But, I mean, most of the time, you don't have tools in your hands. Most of the time, it's just this.
That's
And
true.
the VR market, like, if you look over the last decade, you go over what Carmack says about Beat Saber changing the market. What he looked at is said, "Okay, how do we're gonna turn these tools into sabers, and we're gonna give you the role play of being a lightsabering dancing Jedi." And, yeah, that had a massive, massive impact. But
Mm.
I still argue that everything that Meta has done over the last decade was down the very specific path that the Oculus folks took them down, right? We're gonna make a game console for VR. We're not gonna and the whole time, people have been like, "I've got my PC. It works fine. Why do I need a new one?" Right? And Meta, like that's it gets me frustrated here where like for 10 years now, Mark Zuckerberg has been looking for a computing platform. And for 10 years now, every single member of our community and developer group out there, a competitor for Meta has said, "Mark, you can't trick us. You
Yeah.
can't tell us you're an open computing platform when you're not actually an open computing platform." The PC is still there, guys. The PC is still the open computing platform
Yes.
that we've all been screwing around with for 40 years, right? You go get your graphics card, you get your USB hubs, you get your power supply, you put it all together and hit the power button, boom, it turns on. And now you can hook it up to a VR headset. Now you can make if you really want to, you can make the PC super small and put it in your backpack and then hook it up to your VR headset. Like, it's all still there. It's all as open as you always as what made you fall in love with the concept to begin with. And no amount of hundreds of billions of dollars Mark Zuckerberg can spend is ever going to convince a single person out there in this audience that like, "Oh, it's an open PC, but you gotta use your Facebook account. Oh, it's an open PC, but you gotta use your Meta account and log into the Horizon store and see all the Horizon worlds first," right? Like, it doesn't like, all of you out there are too smart for that, and it
Yes.
keeps failing over and over again.
Right on. Well, hey, real quick, before we say anything else, I want to thank, I'm going to say Callie or Kaylee O for becoming a member today on the stream. Thank you so much for your patronage of what we're doing here. And if you haven't already considered membership, please do consider becoming a member here on the Upload VR YouTube channel, as well as our site, as we are going to be doing some really cool members first stuff coming up.
Yep. Very, very good call out. Yes, thank you, Callie, and thank you to all of our members. We're at an hour here, and we breezed through those subjects pretty quickly,
We
got through
did.
them.
We did.
Very good
We did.
discussion with our audience, a good audience for I don't think we've had this many people for Gamescast in a little while. So,
It's kind of nice.
yeah, thank you for tuning in. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of our regulars,
Oh,
we got Davin, made it finally, Mr. Masilium, Mineweaver. I want to say hi to my friend Mineweaver out there, Anakazi. You guys are killing it with your chat as always. You're always so thoughtful. We have the best community, yeah, and we really do. Somebody said that
we
earlier
do.
in the chat that they said, that we have one of the tightest, best communities for our shows on Upload, and I really thank you for seeing that. So.
So Ja Jada Productions saying they use their Legion Go for PCVR. I would love to
Oh,
see video of
oh
and
yeah.
a report of what your performance is like doing that, what game you're using, and what you're able to do, because that is the path we are on. And think about that. What happens What happens if Valve actually releases, the Deckard, and you can install whatever the heck you want on it? You can make that
That would
thing.
be great.
Uh, you can pretend. What if like this is what where do we get to a market where you can install Horizon OS or Android XR on a Steam
Mhm.
on a Steam handheld? I don't know. I don't know. So we've got there's lots of technical layers in the implementation that may make that thing that hard to achieve. But again, we're moving on a crazy interesting path that like you can imagine packaging up an APK
Oh,
and
yeah.
then getting that running on a large number of systems. And that's going to be wild. Whatever headset does that properly is going to be it's going to rewire our brains on how like all this stuff functions.
Yeah, and, I'm glad that you brought up Deckard too. I mean, so here's the cool thing. I mean, we've been talking for the better part, if you're just joining the stream, because I just saw 4 or 5 more people pop in. We've been talking on the back half of this stream about the comments that John Carmack made weighing PCVR versus standalone. And, a lot of the chat has been, I've seen a couple of comments that say PCVR is dead, and I've got to push back on that. I really do. PCVR is not dead. PCVR is not going anywhere. The market is shifting towards standalone, yes, because again, that is the lower hanging fruit. That is where we're going to see more of the market share going right now. But I don't see PCVR dying. It just, even if you correlate the hardware right now, we have so many new PCVR headsets popping up on the market every other week. It's like we've got the Megan Aches, AKX Superlight. We've got the Play for Dream, which is the first Android-based headset that we're going to see here pretty soon. We've got, a Valve has something in the works. So PCVR is still out there, but a lot of the commenters have really nailed it. It's just a slower growing side of the market. I agree with that. I think you nailed it. Yeah. Ian is working to get his mic back there. I could hear him, but I couldn't hear him in the other ear. So I will keep. Yeah, Obzar. Yeah, I see his lips moving, but no sound. That happens from time to time. We've got all this awesome tech going back and forth, but continuing the conversation until he comes back. I just it as I've said, guys, PCVR is what I've been chasing for the better part of 25 years. So, do I feel personally that it's going to go anywhere? No, I really don't. I mean, you think most of these games are actually made on PC and then ported over to Quest anyway. So, I mean, as long as developers are having to make games in PCs, we're going to be playing games on PCs. So,
So
are you
I
back?
love that. I think I'm back. So where that gets really interesting is okay. And something we'll discuss on VR Download extensively. Highly encourage you to become a member or just join our channel, subscribe so you can get those conversations when we have them. Um, but if you take a step back and start wondering, does Meta have the money to keep its investment going in all of these platforms they're trying to build simultaneously? Do they have the money to keep investing in VR, AI, Horizon Worlds, and
Robotics
their
now. I mean, they're about to
robotics
get into
now as
robotics, yeah.
yeah, and their the wristband solution, right? Okay, so they've got
Mhm.
this wristband solution, and I've got an editorial that I still need to finish, but in that editorial, I'm I'm breaking down this idea that like we still haven't seen the aces up Meta's sleeves regarding the future of the Meta platform. So Meta has the wristband that no one out there, very few people have experienced, that they're actively testing, that hypothetically can provide both tracking, input, and haptic feedback at your wrist. Imagine all that stuff together. None of you have tried it. You also haven't tried the codec avatars, the avatars that look like the actual people, okay? I've tried them out at conferences, and I tried them out on a PC VR based system, guys. Okay, um, and they're phenomenal, life changing systems to be able to feel like your coworker is actually there with you or your family member is actually there with you floating right. We have yet to see Meta try to put all of those things together into a computing platform. What we saw was a Quest Pro a couple years ago that
Mhm.
didn't have the avatars, didn't have good enough eye tracking, didn't have necessarily good enough hand tracking, couldn't see in the dark, I don't think. Had all these limitations. It was like let's get you a slightly more powerful Quest 2 without any reason to
Roughly.
use it other than that, right? And then right after that, Apple shipped what it views as like, let's throw everything into the VR headset and get that where we need to go. My point being, right? Like you just ran your codec avatars straight off a PC. You went on Lex Friedman's, what was it, Lex Friedman's podcast
Yeah, it
as
was.
these avatars to present them out, and they don't describe what they used to stream them, right? We
Mhm.
would have, if that had happened here, we would have nailed at the beginning of every single show. We outline what hardware we're using for
Yes, we
you, our
do.
audience, so that you can break down what it would cost you to do something similar to what we're doing, right? What are the inroads for doing that? Well, Zuckerberg comes out repeatedly again and again and again, the Orion glasses, the codec avatars with Lex Freeman, and shows off what their vision is further out. But when you actually go and try to do these things, you realize there's a whole bunch of like asterisks on the ability to do this. Oh, you got to log into your Meta account. Oh, you got to log in as you got to become a developer.
Mhm.
You can't just be a meta person. You got to also unlock unknown sources by telling them you're a developer. Oh, those weren't there in the original things. Oh, I've got to use uh, Steam Steam Link, or I've got to use Virtual Desktop because the built-in Oculus solution isn't working well this week. Like all those things pop up for anyone that tries to like use this low-cost hardware in this other way that I'm describing. Oh, man.
Yeah,
Any
it's funny
comments we
it's
should
funny you
respond
mentioned
to? I
I was
feel
gonna
like
say it's funny you mentioned
yeah.
the virtual desktop and everything. Secret again, he says, "How much longer will AirLink be a thing until Meta kills it?" And then, Mr. Mycelium, everybody's agreeing, thank God for virtual desktop. I gotta say earlier when you mentioned the Steam Link news, I was unaware because I kinda use virtual desktop for everything. I just it's kind of become my all-in-one solution and definitely
Yeah.
the most used app on my Quest. So
So so a bunch of people out there keep asking about Avalanche. We keep seeing that pop up in our comments. So if you're unfamiliar, that's the code name for Meta's PCVR streaming solution directly from the cloud.
mhm.
We've had in this studio reported in our memory banks. We've got this track record of having I'm gonna get the wrong name. It's not Shadow. What was the name
Oh,
of the PCVR streaming service
uh,
that went out of business last year? I can't think of its name, but they were
uh,
going with a
Stadia. Stadia. No, no, not Stadia.
no, that's Google. We'll remember it. Someone
That's
will bring
Google's.
it up
We'll
from our
we'll get it, or
comments what
somebody
the
will put it
company
in the
was.
thing. Yeah.
But they were doing the same thing as Avalanche. They were streaming PCVR from the cloud, and you would pay for tokens. You would pay for time to use PCVR from the cloud. And as long as your data stream was high quality from the cloud to you could get Half-Life Alyx with minimal latency. The problem was Meta made a rule that said you have to have physical access to your PC in order to have
Yeah.
that feature. And so, like people like Virtual Desktop, you could, if you wanted to, go and get like a virtual PC and route that through Virtual Desktop, but you got to do that all on your end as the user. It's nothing that Virtual
Oh,
Desktop can sort of aid you in. Um, but this rule effectively killed the entire market for this idea in favor of Meta preserving it for themselves outside of those few like exceptions like I just described. And what that means is for the people that are like worried about it going away, no, what I would expect is Airlink to become Avalanche. I would expect
yeah.
this entire platform, like if you've got a PC, all Meta will want you to do on that PC is maybe download your files to the PC, so you could download, like, the movies and videos you capture, or maybe you
Storage.
can
Yeah.
hand yeah, yeah, like, you're offloading things that you captured on the PC. You're not playing games on that PC that you're bringing up to the headset. They're gonna very much want most of that stuff to be in the cloud, games that you previously purchased from the Meta PC store, so things like Asgard's Wrath 1, that's the stuff that Meta wants to stream at you from their PC cloud, uh, eventually with Avalanche. But like, what? It makes no sense that they would have both AirLink, virtual desktop, Avalanche. All like there has to be some kind of, I don't know, simplifying of that entire system for the end user, and how much openness that leaves for third party solutions when that happens is an obvious question. I've pointed this out to David. David kind of shoots me down when I talk about this on VR download, but I need a better router. I need my router managed by one of these VR companies so that I don't lose performance in my VR headset walking from one room of my house to the other.
There I
That's
mean, there
that's what
are
I'm experiencing
solutions.
right now.
I mean, Prism XR makes a little dedicated, mini router thing that you can hook to your PC that dedicates a connection to your VR headset, from your PC's internet that is already receiving. So there's one solution there, but I agree.
Oh wow.
I will say a router makes a huge difference, especially when it does come to AirLink or any wireless transmission. I recently upgraded to a tri-band router with Wi-Fi 6E. Obviously, we have Wi-Fi 7 on the horizon now, but just having that dedicated 6E channel for just my VR equipment and only my VR equipment is allowed to connect to that channel, it has significantly reduced latency and just made my experience so much closer to being on a wire. So, I mean, it's not cheap. These routers are not, very inexpensive routers, but if you really want the best wireless PC VR experience right now, definitely upgrade to something where you can dedicate a channel to your VR equipment.
Yeah, I was talking to we'll see a way we can talk to Geek Odin hopefully over a virtual desktop because I put this question to him multiple times over the years. It's a reliable question in our audience of what router do I get. I think the
Yeah,
recommendation is not to go and get a mesh router with multiple endpoints because of the
right. I
way
don't do
things get.
mesh. Yeah.
Yeah, and but like Don, the thing that you're right. Everything you just described. But my setup at home right now, right? I went and I've got the Vision Pro. And what that means is, I've also got the Quest 3. I want
Mm,
every piece of media in my home
yeah.
to be playable inside of each of these HMDs. How do I do that? How do I get my game cartridge from the Game Boy in 1990, my Blu-ray disc that I just purchased, my Ultra HD Blu-ray disc that I got, my DVD, how do I get all of those to come into my system. Not only that, that's an easy solve, right? Relatively
Yeah.
speaking. I also want to get my Steam game, my latest Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, whatever that game is. I want to get that game from my office at the other end of the house to my bedroom, such that I'm playing with a gamepad in my bed on an 80-inch television, on an 80-inch screen, and there's no latency whatsoever between the gamepad and my office. So I need to figure out how does my gamepad route to my office with no latency? Do I trust it to Steam? Do I trust Steam to route that? Or do I come up with a ridiculous 40-foot USB cord that runs all the way from the office around the walls of all my homes and puts a little broadcast extender this much
I could see
closer to
that.
my bedroom in order to go wireless here from 30 feet from where I am in bed to that thing, and then it runs on a wire all the way back to my office, right? Uh, Letting Steam control my input works for all the Steam games. But what happens when I want to go to Steam Desktop and load some game from my desktop that isn't in the Steam ecosystem, and I want to play that game in my bedroom? in the same exact way. Well, I can't depend on that routing
Yeah.
system for my button clicks in my bedroom all the way to the office over there. That's why I have to have the physical routing of my button presses in the bedroom all the way across. Anyways, this I'm describing the friction that's keeping people out of their VR headsets. This is like it sounds like this is the most luxurious stupidest use of VR at the same time. However, we don't have a television in our bedroom, right? I'm going
Yeah. Oh,
to
yeah.
enjoy every bit of media that I own in my bed without disturbing my partner, right? There's no light in the bedroom whatsoever except for my eyeballs. And that's a dream come true for a lot of people. Like there's more than one person out there. There's an audience of people who are like,
Oh, I do
man,
it all the time.
my wife hates the TV or my husband hates the TV. He sleeps in complete silence
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and complete darkness. And gosh, when I was growing up, I kept myself awake with the television for 2 hours and slowly was lulled to sleep by it. This is the answer. This solves it, and it solves it today.
Oh
But
my
you
god.
have to solve this problem that I'm talking about. And for the vast majority of people out there, they are not going to be doing the routing that I'm discussing. They're going to need to just trust that when they go to the bedroom, their button pad presses are gonna make it to the
Mhm.
game at the other end of the house. And, like, it's a losing battle to assume that your audience isn't out there with Switches and Steam Decks and PCs and, other handhelds, that they all want routed all this way over their home Wi-Fi network. We need better Wi-Fi. Alright,
Well,
that's
no,
my I'm done
I
with that
agree,
essay
and
for
I
this week.
and less friction. I mean, less friction, like you say. I mean, anything that creates a friction point for average users is gonna be that detrimental factor that they say, "Okay, now I gotta do this and I gotta do that just to play. No, I don't wanna do that." I'm just gonna go watch TV. I'm just gonna do something else. So, I
And
agree. I mean, removing friction points from getting into your VR headset and allowing it to do exactly what you want it to do for you is key to making, that adoption stick. So,
I like Deb's comment here. Easier when you live in one room studio because VR is low latency for poor people. I love it, and
there
honestly,
oh,
like that's
yes,
the
yes.
that's the other arrangement of my personal system is okay. What can I do when it's just me with a backpack on? What is
Ah,
entirely what is if you're going to be a vagabond, drifting from place to place, taking buses, you have no home address, right? You just want to live that lifestyle, the nomadic lifestyle. What can you do with a VR headset that you could not do any other way? Well, if that's your lifestyle, right, you're probably going to libraries to read your
probably.
emails, to spend your, you know, to connect with others. Well, now you can do it in a VR headset, right? You can
Like,
be
right there.
anywhere and don't have to have the other people at the library reading your emails over your shoulder in order to send a message to your family member, right? Like
Mhm.
it changes all those preconceptions that you have in your brain about the people who might a use a library in that way. You kind of need to toss those out of the window and recognize those as preconceptions because like a VR headset is entirely useful at $300 for those types of use cases. The only reason it's not being used is because the software is so crappy.
Yes, I
Ah,
oh, don't even get me started on software because that's a whole other rabbit hole we could go down, but I love this, David Bigelow. VR in the storage unit as snow crash intended.
yep, yep, yep,
And then we
yep.
got
There are
OpsR,
people who
you
do it.
own
If
nothing
that's
but your
you,
VR backpack. Oh, yeah. No,
if
I
that's
okay,
you,
so
email us.
my first like, I bought my house because it had a 10 by 12 storage unit in the back that I was gonna turn into my VR room. So, it's like,
Yep.
it's a thing, you know?
I, I'm I'm in my so I've one day soon, hopefully I'll show off my VR office here, and it's a
We'll
closet.
do that.
I've converted a closet into my office, and slowly what I'm doing, Don, is turning it into the super hot entry room. You know,
Okay.
the room that
Oh,
you're in.
yeah. Okay. I get it. Yeah,
You,
that'd be awesome.
so if you've ever played super hot, you go through I think it's a little like hallway, right? And then you end up in
Yeah,
the little
yeah. And
room
then
and
you
you've
end
got
up
your
in the room with the
HMD
computer. Yeah.
and you put it over your head and now you're playing super hot. That's very, very close to what my office is becoming with a row of discs all in their different containers. So I've got my Blu-ray discs in one container, my DVDs in another, and it's just 30 seconds to take one disc, put it out. Here I'm enjoying it with all of you. And here's the crazy thing about all of these. If you haven't tried this, um, it's very easy to, if you get the right capture card, to send the movie that's coming through the capture card through to your video calling window.
Oh,
So
interesting.
if you're doing a FaceTime call on your Mac, and I'm assuming it works the same way over on PC, if you're doing a video call over on your PC, it is not too hard to tell those video calls to take the
Huh.
camera input from the camera input that your computer is receiving externally from another device that typically would be a Logitech camera, but given the long march of technology, can actually be an external HDMI input device. So that's my coded way of saying there is a route for you to watch movies with your friends that doesn't require any outside help to make it
Mm.
possible, right? Whatever that media is in your library, you can call up your family or friends and do that, and it is there. It is possible. It's just a software nightmare, and I think the software is going to improve this year.
Right on. I
All right, we
agree.
done here?
I
Yeah,
think,
I think
yeah,
we're done here.
Beck is telling us we're at an hour and a half here, and we've had some great comments today, good conversation. I mean, good subjects. So, yeah, I gotta say, PCVR is not dead. That's where I'm gonna leave
Arlen,
it.
that opened up a line of thought I hadn't thought about. What do virtual screens do for cybersecurity in public spaces for private and professional utility? If I had a reporter in China who was reporting for Upload VR from China, I would probably want them to use a VR headset that they only have physical access to, that they never
Yeah.
let themselves out of their physical access because of what you just described, Arlen. So we'll get into more subjects like that on VR Download with David Heaney.
Yes.
If you're one of those people who are in the storage container or living that vagabond lifestyle using your VR headset to help you, if you're one of our viewers out there, do let us know. Tips at uploadvr.com. We'd love to talk to you about your lifestyle and what you're doing, because I think you're out there and people just aren't reporting on you. So let us know if that's you. We will
I
see you
believe
on
it.
Thursday for VR Download, and yeah, we'll have the latest for you on VR Gamescast. This is very much becoming a play cast where we don't just cover games, we're covering all the ways people play in VR headsets. Thank you to Beck for getting this going for us today, and we will see you in the future.
Peace.